Welcome to By All Means Necessary Real Recovery Talk. My name is Marco. I'm a grateful recovering addict. And we are at episode 21. We have two special guests in the studio today. We have Mark Astor and his partner, Audra. Hi, guys.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's a real pleasure. And I want to shout out Janine for the introduction. So we want to put that out there as well, too.
Big thanks to Janine.
Big thanks to Janine. So hopefully she'll listen to this episode. Mark Astor is the founder of Drug and Alcohol Attorneys, a boutique law firm that specializes in helping families and individuals in crisis because of substance use and mental health disorders. So that's a little bio background. The whole premise when we were talking before we started this episode was that I wanted to have people understand the side of the disease of addiction and mental health and certain situations and ramifications that people that find themselves, that they get themselves into, and they don't know where to go or who to turn to. And I think that's important that, we actually, really shed light on that in situations. And we'll get into actually an experience that we had together of a friend that I needed help with. So why don't you go ahead? I'll let you guys take the stage and give us where did you guys start this whole company?
Wow. Oh, that's a long story. But first of all, thank you for having us. We're grateful. We're humbled that you took time to, just to introduce us to yourself and hopefully see your wife. And we're excited to be here. And, I'm so glad to hear you refer it to it as a disease, because that's exactly what it is. And for the longest time, it was sort of, it's a choice, right? Yeah, someone chooses to use, or they choose to have mental illness, and well, shame on them. Why don't they, make a different choice? So refreshing to hear that, because for the longest time, we've been going 8 years now, and we get parents all the time. We say, well, why does my son or my daughter do those things? Well, it's a disease, and it's not a choice.
Exactly.
So what do? We think of ourselves really as sort of the last port of call for lots and lots of families. So we're typically taking calls from mums and dads whose adult children have been dealing with substance use and mental illness for years and years and years. They've probably been in and out of more treatment centers than the parents care to remember. There have probably been multiple overdoses, trips to the emergency room, multiple doses of Narcan.
Jeez.
And they come to us and say, okay, we're ready. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And, okay, we want the miracle. What do we have to do?
Okay.
And
What's the miracle?
Well, the miracle, you're the miracle, right? You're a classic example of what the miracle is, right?
Right.
Which is long-term recovery, right? Being a productive member of society, going to work, making a difference, giving back, a significant other, children. I mean, all those things are the miracle, right? And
right.
The fact that you and I are even sitting here, I mean, that in and of itself is a miracle, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So that is, just a very small part of what the miracle is. But we're the beginning, right? We're hopefully the catalyst for that miracle to take place. I can't tell you I have a magic wand or any of those other things, but this is the beginning of a long road, and it takes time. I mean, typically when we're dealing with a family and I say the family because it's the family that's been dealing with this situation for a long time. I mean, there's a reason they call it a family disease, because it's like a metastasizing cancer. It will eat and destroy the family, and it will just wreck everything, and it will do unless it's dealt with.
Yeah, and not a lot of people really understand the ramifications and what that does to the other side. Just really quick, that's why my wife's been on here, and we just did a podcast with my 21-year-old and my 16-year-old. So the whole thing is to shed light on listen, it's just not the individual that has the disease of addiction. It's a whole family affair. So you actually were talking about that you started in the library, the business. What can you talk? Can you kind of talk about that? What was that journey like?
I'm not in recovery, but I had my own, journey.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a journey of some kind, and that either strengthens us or destroys us. And for me, it was the kick in the pants I needed. So I'll go back a little bit in time just to give you some background here.
Yeah.
Marco. I was an assistant state attorney in Palm Beach County from 94 to 99. I was prosecutor. And during that time, I saw a lot of individuals who were constantly coming through the revolving door of the courthouse, right? They talk about the revolving door of the emergency room, but there's a revolving door of the courthouse too.
Right.
And I was like, well, what's going on here? You know, I mean, what was going on was these were people who had substance use and mental health issues back in the mid 90s. I mean, you know, we weren't as enlightened as we are now. And they simply weren't getting the help that they needed. And, you know, I left there in 99. I did some defense work for a while, and I sort of got lost. I lost my passion for being a lawyer. I got married and divorced. Had a very short marriage, made lots of money. Stock market crashed in 08. I lost pretty much everything. Took what was left, ran off to California, took the bar out there twice, failed it twice, had a good time. And then about 11 years ago, my father got sick and I had run out of money anyway, so I had to come back. My father passed. I failed the bar again. And then I got an opportunity, and, you know, we talk about miracle. On a whim, I had called an old friend from law school that I hadn't spoken to in years, and he said, you know, there's this guy talking in Coral Gables next week. You really should go and listen to him. His name is Arjon Robbins. And I said, well, who the hell's that? I never heard of the guy.
Right.
I said, I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive from Boca to Coral Gables, 7:15. It's not happening. So I've put it away, and for days and days and days, I was like, God, you know, I don't know why I have this nagging feeling I got to go see this guy. So I did. I went and saw him, and Arjon Robbins hired me after I saw what he was talking about.
Wow.
Arjon runs a company called How to Manage a Small Law Firm based in Miami. And ironically, Audra and I went to law school with him and didn't know him at the time. He was there right around the time we were, but we'd never met him. And he teaches lawyers the business side of running a law firm, right? Not something they teach in law school.
Okay.
But what it really was a personal growth company for lawyers. How ironic, right? Personal growth and lawyers all in the same building. That seems a bit ironic. But the underlying philosophy was that personal growth has to precede financial growth. Okay. And for me, that meant putting on my big boy pants and finally finding what was missing. And what was missing was that I wasn't feeling good about myself. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't helping anybody.
Right.
And so I realized when I really sat down and thought about it that I had close friends, family members who were dealing with substance use and mental illness. And I said, okay, those are the people I'm going to help. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I read a little bit about the Marchment Act, and I said, okay, well, I've done criminal defense work, so I can help them in the criminal arena. There's this statute out there called the Marchment Act that apparently, you know, a couple of lawyers are using. That looks like it could help a lot of people too. But I had no money at the time. My father was I think he was still alive at the time. And Boca Raton had a really cool library that had free Wi-Fi. I said, okay. So I sat down and I started to what we call smile and dial. I started calling people and I said, hi.
Right.
I know you haven't heard from me in a long time. They're like, who are you? I thought you went to California.
Yeah.
And I started to just put my name out there. I started visiting treatment centers to introduce myself. I had to take some cases that I wasn't familiar with. I think the first case I had was a student athlete in Central Florida who him and another boy were accused of sexual misconduct with a girl, but that was a big payday. And that enabled me to get an office and start a little marketing. And then, you know, I took some other cases. I took some family law cases with other lawyers. And then 14 months into it, I got a phone call from somebody who when I had a sibling who had their own personal crisis 2 days after my father passed, and was just an inspiration for me. She called me up and said, hey, I've got this Marchment Act case for you. Do you want it? And I said, yep, I want it.
Can I pause you really quick? Can you just really give a description of people that don't understand? What is a Marchment Act?
So the Marchment Act is a statute that's unique to Florida and is basically a court order sending someone to treatment for periods of up to 90 days where there is a primary substance use disorder. Okay. That's what it is. Right. And it's one of 3 statutes that we now use as tools to get people into treatment and to keep them there long enough. All right,
thank you. If you
Sorry, we're so used to using the terms.
No, it's okay. I just want people to understand, you know, so go ahead, continue what you're saying now.
So, you know, for 7 years, really until the beginning of, I started the business in February of 2016 and up until February of 2022, it was just me and Audra. Audra and I started working together about 2 years in. We met at a networking event and she swept me off my feet.
Oh boy.
But more importantly, she started to tell me that, you know, she lived in Massachusetts for a long time where her children were born and raised, and she'd worked down here and she was doing guardianship work. So
okay.
a guardianship. So, you know, when my father was ill and had, you know, signs of stroke damage and dementia, if we had needed to, if my siblings and I hadn't been on the same page, we could have, at least not on the same page as my father. We could have gone into court and
Right.
judge would have given us permission to make financial medical decisions for him. So the guardianship statute was typically used for elderly people. I said, I wonder if we could use it to help some of the people that we're dealing with, because, sometimes
interesting.
Families need a lot more control. Marchment Act's great, but it's a very, very narrow, what I call a narrow form of relief.
In what way is it narrow?
Well, because really it just, so if I get a Marchment Act over you, it just says, Mark, or you'll go to treatment for 90 days. And if you don't, we're going back to see the judge and you might go to jail.
Okay.
And now, I say to the treatment, I want to see Marco's medical records because I want to know if he's doing if he's doing what he needs to do. No. He hasn't signed a release of information. You can't get any of that. Well, I want to make sure Marco doesn't spend any of the money he has when he gets out on drugs. Oh, you can't do that either. Yeah. Well, what about, can I control where he lives? No. What about who he spends time with? No. Well, he's talking about flying to Mexico. I want to stop him from flying. You can't do that either. So it's a very narrow form of relief. Now, for some cases, it's great. The guardianship is much broader. We can control lots and lots of things, right? We can temporarily suspend lots of rights while Marco is focusing on recovery and getting well. Right. And then when Marco, has the capacity to make decisions like, should he spend money on things other than drugs, or should Marco be living in this particular area because it's good for him, right? And so, and now there are sometimes where we'll combine something. We'll combine a Marchment Act and a guardianship, because what's cool about Marchment is I can go get a court order and literally pick you up off the streets, and I can do it within a couple of hours.
It's amazing, man. Like I honestly, I've never heard of anything like this before until I've researched you guys, to be honest with you. And I mean, this is a real game changer. It's a real game changer. Like you're telling, you can decide where people actually, they don't have to go back to that same area where they were using, if that's all they know, you can actually put them somewhere where it's more of a safe haven. Exactly. Okay. So go ahead. Thanks.
So that's what we've been doing. And so at the beginning of the year, it was just the two of us, and we decided we needed help. So as of Monday, there'll be the two of us plus 3 lawyers, and Michael, who's joining us on Monday, is also in recovery. He's a lawyer. We have Kathleen, who's our paralegal. Her sister's in recovery. In fact, when we hired her sister was in treatment. And Jared, who is in Tennessee, he's not in recovery, but
he has 5 kids.
He's got 5 kids, so he's got his own problems. But he speaks to to all of our prospective clients. So, we have a whole team. Plus, I have 2 retired cops that work for me. One's former DEA, one's a former Palm Beach County.
And what do they do? In what capacity? What do they do?
So they're sort of our law enforcement division. So when we get a pickup order, which basically is a court order telling law enforcement to go and collect somebody, they will normally go out to the scene before the cops get there, because our law enforcement are just overwhelmed right now. And it's, they're crime fighters. They're not social workers. And so not that they don't care. They just don't have the manpower to get out there as quick as I want them out there. And I want them out now. If I've got a court order at 5 o'clock, I want that person picked up by 6.
Wow.
That means my guys need to go out there, find the person, because we may not know where they are.
Right.
And then get the cops to come out and pick them up. Wow. So, and I have a licensed clinical social worker also on staff. And
you have a licensed clinical social worker.
Yeah, he's part of my team. And
now we have a new interventionist.
We have a new life coach, and who you're going to meet, our good friend Jimmy, which is again part of the miracle, right? Sharing the, if I introduce you to somebody and you introduce me to somebody and we get to help somebody, well, that's miracle too. Right. That's all part of what we do. So,
so there's, I think for the past couple months, I'm not really big on the whole social media, to be honest with you, but on Facebook, there's a lot of video clips of you talking about Baker Act.
Yes.
So for the listeners, can you give us a definition of what Baker Act is here? And can you break down what you both do in terms of how what your beliefs are, for one, about it, and what capacity and what you guys do with the firm, and kind of let's talk about that. What does that look like?
Okay, so the 3 main laws that we use are Baker Act, Marchment Act, and the guardianship statute. And what those 3 laws have in common is that they are what we call forms of involuntary commitment, meaning that you can be taken and placed in a facility.
Right.
The Baker Act allows the state of Florida to take custody of you on a temporary basis when there's an emergency situation caused by some form of mental illness, which renders you in immediate danger to yourselves, i.e., you're threatening to kill yourself, i.e., you have tried to kill yourself. Somebody found you hanging from the ceiling. You slit your wrist, and somebody found you bleeding out.
Right.
That's going to get you Baker acted.
Right.
And so that's a useful tool. And while we don't want the state taking custody of people, there are situations where that's the fastest way to get somebody help.
Okay.
So there are basically two systems in the state of Florida. There is the state's criminal justice system, and then there's the state's mental health system. And the Baker Act is a gateway to the state's mental health system. Right. Now you can get this through the criminal system, but for our purposes, not to complicate things, because it's 123 pages of a garbled mess at Chapter 394, which is the Baker Act statute, but it's basically the statute that allows the state of Florida to come grab you and to temporarily take custody of you. Mm-hmm. But as useful as that can be, and there are times where we might use it too, because it can be done on an ex parte basis, meaning I go to Baker Act you don't know about it until my guys show up with the cops.
Exactly.
Right? Which is useful if you're about to slit your wrist, or you have done.
Sure.
Right? Or you're in a hospital emergency room, and now the hospital's going to let you go because you said, I'm not sticking around. You have a right to refuse medical attention. I need to make sure you don't leave, because you go back and you're going to go do it again. Right? So it's useful, but the problem is that it can be abused. How can it be abused?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about abuse, because
that's fucked up.
Yes, that is an appropriate word.
No, this is real recovery. That is it. And I'll give you an example how I was Baker acted. So go talk about that.
So here's the problem with the Baker Act. Okay, you get Baker acted one of three ways. Okay, somebody petitions the court for an ex parte order for assessment. Law enforcement, the police, get called to the scene. They can Baker act you. Mm-hmm. Or somebody who's defined under the statute as a qualified professional, like a licensed clinical social worker, hospital emergency room doctor, psychiatrist, decides that you meet criteria, and they issue what's known as a, quote, professional's certificate, which is a sworn document saying Marco meets Baker Act criteria. Law enforcement come and get him and take him to a Baker Act receiving facility. Right. You could go there, and the problem is that in theory, nobody knows that you are there because they don't have to report to anybody, right?
Yeah.
Here's the
why don't they have to report that to anybody?
Here's the wackiness of it, okay? Marco gets arrested for an alleged crime, okay? He gets taken to the Palm Beach County Jail. Mm-hmm. Now, if Marco can't afford to post what's known as a scheduled bond, or Marco's charged with a crime where there is no bond, like DUI, domestic violence, capital murder, Marco automatically, as a matter of law, must see a judge within 24 hours to address two things. One, was there probable cause to arrest you? And two, what's a reasonable bond, right? Because the whole idea of, we don't want people sitting in custody. First, you have a presumption of innocence, and two, it costs a lot of money to keep people in jail. Right. Well, if you haven't convicted of anything, and as long as we can make sure that you're going to show back up to your court dates, well, we don't want you sitting in custody, right? Right. So the judge has found probable cause, you posted a bond, right? But you got to see a judge. You got due process. In fact, you even got a lawyer appointed for you if you couldn't afford one. Right. You've been charged with a crime, alleged to have committed a crime. Here's Marco, who's been Baker acted, and nobody potentially is ever going to review if Marco was legally Baker acted. So you are basically sucked into this black hole, which is the state's mental health system, and nobody knows you're there.
And they don't even have access. Even if they did know that you were there, they don't have access to you.
Facility says, you know what? No, we're not going to give you phone privilege. You can't call anybody.
Oh, I
want to call my wife. No, not happening. So hopefully Marco's wife knows what happened, because the cops said, listen, I'm taking him to, it's here in Palm Beach County. We're taking him to South County Mental Health. So Marco's wife calls me and says, hey, they took my husband to South County Mental Health. There's nothing wrong with him, right? Now I go into court and I tell the judge what's going on here. And now you're going to get due process, because I'm going to drag them into court. And now, so we are averaging about 100. We get hired on about 100 of those cases a year.
100. What specifically? What cases?
So these are Baker Act violations. Those are the cases I get hired on.
100
I probably get called on 500
violation cases per year.
Yeah, at any one time, I've probably got anywhere between 3 and 5 cases pending in a courthouse somewhere in the state of Florida.
Okay, so let's just really quick. I want to interject, right? Because I want people to understand, if you have no fucking clue what it's like, to be honest with you, I'll tell you from experience, okay? I'm not going to name people, places, or things. I was Baker acted by a psychiatrist. I was driven to the psych ward. Okay. I was there for 8 days, pumped, full of, I don't know what this medicine was, to be honest with you. I was in a room with no toilet seat, no shower curtain, no windows, no chairs, no sheets on the bed, locks on the doors, bars on the windows for 8 days, and nobody can get a hold of me. The fucking system is rigged, man. Like, how do you do like that? How do you do that to people? And somebody can just say, okay, they need to be Baker acted. And that's it. And then you're in a system where this is horrific, man. Like, this is like, I want people to understand, like, this causes so much trauma. Like, yes. I would wake up and this is 8 days. You have to, over a week, I'm in a place where I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody's name. I'm seeing various faces of various doctors. I wake up, needle. Are you fucking kidding me? And then one day, they're like, okay, you're no phone, like, wow, this is crazy, man.
It's an epidemic.
This is a fucking epidemic, man. The system is rigged.
The system is
rigged. I mean, go ahead.
Well,
sorry. I just needed people to understand.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm agreeing with you, and I've told you, Shed, I had my own family issues with the Baker Act, close and personal, and I mean, I've spoken publicly about that. There are some serious problems with the Baker Act.
Like what? Like what? What do you feel?
I think so. Here's the number one problem about the Baker Act. There's no first appearance. There's no first appearance mechanism. Meaning, if you get Baker acted, right? If you get Baker acted, you should be seeing a judge within 24 hours, just as if you got arrested. At least that way, the judge can say, "Hold on a second, why was Marco Baker acted? What the hell's going on here?"
Yeah. Yes.
Well. If judge is going to say, Marco should not have been Baker acted, I want him released right now. Or the judge says, Marco was Baker acted legally, but I'm appointing him counsel because I want a lawyer looking at this. so that if we find the problem after the fact, Marco's lawyer can come back into court and I can take a look, see what's going on here.
Right.
See, once the court's sort of overhead, now the facilities, they know that someone's watching over them. Now these are licensed facilities, and they have almost a license to print money to a certain extent. Now, Does that mean they're all bad? No. Are there a cluster of them? Do I see the same names over and over and over again?
Right.
You bet.
Yeah, of course.
You bet.
Of course.
So there's no question. It is a problem. There's no doubt about it. It is a real mess. And it could be easily fixed.
So like how do you feel like what would you think that how can this be fixed?
Well, I think the two things need to happen. Number one, there needs to be judicial review,
A judicial review.
Like a first appearance, the judge determining if the Baker Act was good.
Right, yeah.
Right? And we also have to have some kind of monitoring mechanism. So, and I'm going to try not to confuse you, Marco, so bear with me.
Yeah.
Stop me if I do. So here's the thing. There's the Baker Act, right? But there are two forms of detention. Voluntary and involuntary. Mm-hmm. Okay, so under the involuntary detention section of the Baker Act, they can legally hold you up to 72 hours, right? Mm-hmm. That does not include if you went to the emergency room, first of all, and it took 3 days to medically clear you. That medical clearance 3 days tolls the 72-hour clock from starting to tick. So if you spend 3 days in the hospital because, God forbid, something happened to you,
right,
then they transferred you, and you might sit there for 2 days waiting for them to find a bed for you. That facility where you got transferred to, the behavioral health facility, is going to say, Marco, guess what? The 72-hour clock doesn't start until we check you in. And we haven't checked you in yet. Okay? So here we go, right? And by the way, nobody's monitoring that 72-hour clock. Yeah, no. Right?
No.
I'm the Baker facility.
You are. I am, but...
I'm the Baker facility. I'll tell you when it starts and I'll tell you when it ends.
Exactly.
Have a seat, right? So you've got up to 72 hours. After 72 hours expires, one of three things have to happen. They release you. Right? They file a petition for involuntary placement, meaning they are now asking for a judge to order you to be detained for an extended period of time, potentially up to 6 months. Or three, they convince you to stay on a voluntary admission basis.
They convince you to stay on a voluntary
And convince
basis.
is a polite word. What I really mean is they tell you.
What the fuck is that, dude?
What they tell you is if you don't sign this piece of paper right now, you're never getting out of here.
Exactly.
Or we're going to go get a judge who's going to order you to stay for 6 months. You need to sign this thing.
I don't even remember. I think I signed a fucking piece of paper.
They try to get you to sign it.
I probably did.
And guess what happens when you sign the voluntary admission agreement? The 72-hour clock
Gone.
disappears. You can be held indefinitely.
Wow.
And then you say, well, so you've now signed a voluntary admission agreement, and you may not even have known you signed it, right? Because like in your case, you were probably rendered catatonic, and I've seen that many times too.
Yes.
They like to pump you full of meds. Number one, they can build the shit out of it. And number two, well, we're going to keep Marco nice and calm so he doesn't cause any problems.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So you're now on a voluntary admission basis, and 2 days into it, you say, I want to go home.
Right.
No, you don't. No, Marco, you don't want to do this. You don't want to revoke consent. Well, let's say that you do revoke consent. And by the way, there's nobody monitoring if the consent was valid or if the revocation was valid or any of this stuff. But let's say you do revoke consent. Now they have 24 hours to go file that petition for placement. And the hearing for placement, right, for extended detention has to take place within 5 days of the filing. So you get to sit there for those extra 5 days just until you see a judge. So they could go file with no intention of keeping you just to get those extra 5 days.
How many times have you ever even heard of somebody revoking consent?
Well, what normally happens is if I find out that they signed an agreement and they may not know they have, I'll revoke it for them. The statute allows me to do it.
The statute allows you to do it.
You got it.
That's amazing.
So when I go revoke consent, it's revoked.
Nice.
You can take that to the bank.
Okay.
That shit is revoked.
That's amazing.
In writing with my signature on it.
People don't know any of this. People don't know any of this. And it's amazing, like, there's no formula or manual or anything like that, when people have, like a loved one or their kid or something that's going through the system, in and out, arrested, rehab, detention centers, this, that, mental health. Like, this is important information. Like, I wonder, like, do you know how many people are doing what you're doing across, like, the United States? Like, is this like an up and coming thing that's happening?
I don't know of any other law firm in the country that does this and only this. Now, there are other lawyers who do Marchment acts. They are. And I'm not going to poo-poo anybody because they're all fine lawyers, but they're all doing other things. I mean, if I did Marchment acts in car accidents or Marchment acts in divorce work or Marchment act in student nursing homes, you'd be like, well, okay, so what do you do? Well, that's fine. I mean, they're all I know these guys, they're all good lawyers, and that's fine, but I only do one thing. And I'll be candid with you, I do it quicker and better than anybody else because it's all I do. Now, I'm not for everybody, and I'm very blunt and to the point, and I'll be very happy to tell a parent, listen, this is what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And as my old boss used to say, sometimes somebody hasn't suffered enough and they're just not ready to do it. Or maybe they're just not sick and tired enough. Yeah. And that might sound, maybe that sounds blunt, but in 2000 and, was it last year? In 2021, we lost 3 people. Okay, I'm the only lawyer in the country that knows every year I may well get a call from a family to tell me that their kid died.
Wait, so what do you, this really, not really quick, slow down. What do you mean you lost 3 people?
I mean, we had people that
you lost 3 clients.
We had families whose loved ones we put into treatment,
right,
and they overdosed and died. 3 of them. Okay, so I know that I might get that call.
Right.
Okay, and so I take what we do seriously, and there's just no time to blow smoke up someone's rear end and tell them it's all going to be good. We're going to sing Kumbaya. No, it's not. If you don't get your loved one into treatment, they're either going to be dead or in prison. That's the reality, and I don't mean to sugarcoat it. And I'm here to be sympathetic. But now's the time to do something before it's too late. Mm. And in 2021, we had 3 families who lost their loved ones. That's not their fault. I don't think I like to think it's not our fault, and it's certainly not their loved one's fault. It's just that is the reality of substance use and mental illness. Last year, we lost 1 person. Mm-hmm. So I know the reality of the situation, right? And that's why when we talk about, the miracle of recovery, and I say, you are the miracle, you are the miracle, right? And people like you are the miracle, right? But that's the goal here. And I used to have this sort of delusion that, I'm going to save everybody, and that's not reality.
Right.
We can save a lot of people though. And that's what we're trying to do.
Amazing.
And you're part of it too, Marco. You are. I appreciate that. And other people like you who work in the recovery community. Mm-hmm. Takes a village, right?
It takes an army.
Okay.
It takes an army, man. Like it really does. Like it's, like, I want to speak about, over the Christmas break, I know that you remember that, I gave you a phone call, and, I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but there's a person that I knew that was in active addiction, and this individual got arrested, and they got arrested with possession, with enough whatever they had to possession to distribute. And the individual's sister called me and said, "Hey, look, so and so got arrested. They're being held in a center in Port St. Lucie. This is their first offense, no priors, and he's scared as shit, doesn't know what to do. We need help. They're from New York. He got arrested in Port St. Lucie. I called you. I didn't know what to do. We
hadn't even met at the time, right?
We never met.
I think we had just been texting.
Yeah. We just been texting, and this is I'm just the whole legal, this whole side of the disease of addiction and what happens. This is huge. This is why you guys are here, and to shed light and bring answers and solutions. So I called you and I said, "Hey, look, I don't know what to do, man. His sister, they're fucking lost. They're scared. They're in New York. He's in Port St. Lucie. They're talking about this, that, blah, blah, blah. They don't know how to bond. They don't know this, that." So you said, "Okay, I'll help you out, et cetera, et cetera." You put us on to, another attorney that specializes in that. So basically, the individual got bonded out and went back to New York, and they had a chance that the lawyer said, "Okay, you have no prior, so what you're going to do is you're going to go to drug court. You're going to have to go back to Port St. Lucie. You have a hearing. You're going to go back to Port St. Lucie. You're going to go to drug court." So I called the person's sister and I said, "Hey, look, what's their insurance?" They sent me the insurance. I have a good friend here who worked with a rehab, and it just so happens that rehab accepted his insurance, no out of pocket for 30-day treatment. What a blessing, right? So I'm trying to explain that you'd rather go to fucking drug court in Port St. Lucie as opposed to going to a beautiful treatment center in Delray, which has a huge success rate, to be honest with you. The fact of the matter is that, we facilitated this with your help. You recommended another lawyer, and the individual didn't go to treatment, didn't get on the flight from JFK to Fort Lauderdale. And that, what I'm trying to shed light on is you were saying that, we can't help everybody. It takes a village. It takes an army, man. It's you guys have a very tough job, because to deal with the families that they don't know what to do and they're handcuffed and they just want to help this individual that has this disease. They just want them to get better. They want them to get clean. They're so sick and tired of the fucking bullshit, the arrest and this and that. And it's they have no way out. They don't know what to do. They're lost. Yeah.
I mean, they've been in the forest for so long, they can't see any of the trees.
Right.
I mean, they don't, and I had, it reminded me, I had a call yesterday from a lady. I sat on the board of directors for Jewish Family Services for a couple of years, and so I get calls from the Jewish community. This is a nice lady. Her husband had passed away many years ago. She didn't have any money, and she just needed some counsel. She was telling me a very similar story. She had 3 daughters. 2 of them were very successful, and one of them had literally been inactive, using for years and years and years, right, in and out of jail. And she'd gotten arrested for, I think, burglary. Got that she posted bond, got out, got caught with cocaine, and was now back in. And she said, "What should I do?" I said, "Leave her there for right now. Just leave her there, right? Mm-hmm. you should reach out to, she had a public defender. So reach out to the public defender and see if you can get the public defender. I mean, he's her lawyer or she's her lawyer, but see if you can get them as a condition of getting her charges worked out into treatment, because you can use the criminal system too to get somebody into treatment.
Yes.
I said, and guess what? If she doesn't have any money or insurance, the state will pay for it. They'll put her in a county facility or a state facility.
Something.
You got to do something.
Something.
Either that or just leave her there. At least she, you know,
she'll detox.
Yeah, I said she's going to detox while she's in jail.
You know?
She's detoxing in jail right now.
At least she's not left her own devices. She's not on the street.
And that's where she was. Yeah, I mean, man. And this is somebody who came from a nice family. You know, and we will say, right, that substance use and mental illness doesn't discriminate. I mean, she came from, you'd be like, wow, she comes from a nice family. She's got a wonderful mother.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter.
Living on the streets. Unbelievable, right? We pick people up on the streets all the time that come from the most affluent families you can believe.
You pick people, you told me before we started this podcast that you pick people, sometimes you pick people up under a fucking bridge.
Yeah, we picked them up from just about everywhere.
Like, what is that?
I got some wild stories for you, Marco.
Well, we have like 10 minutes, so let's think about, like, I'm not trying to glorify anything. I'm just trying to understand, like, what does it look like for you guys to, like, how does that process work? You get a call, and the mother and the father can't find Jimmy. Walk me through what it's like. How, like, finding somebody under, like, what does this process look like for you guys?
Okay, so, you know, it used to be that when we used to file these cases and request a pickup order,
right,
the clerks would just reject the cases. So listen, you need an exact location because the cops are going to go out there and they're not going looking for anybody. And we said, listen,
they would reject the order.
They wouldn't even accept the file. I said, listen,
okay.
I said, I need you to accept this, and you tell the judge I got a retired cop on staff. I'll go find the person. I have a general idea where they are. Get me my fucking petition in front of the judge. I'll deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we, you know, and that started happening a lot. And the judge, because I had, you know, I've been in the system a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, perhaps they gave my filing some deference. Okay. And the judge has now been pretty good about if I can say in the petition they're in, you know, Broward County or Palm, wherever the county is.
Right.
I'll go find them. As a general, they'll give me an order.
Okay.
So my two guys are absolutely fabulous at finding someone as long as they've got a general location, right?
Okay.
I mean, if you say they're somewhere in Florida, I mean, I'm not saying we couldn't find them because we've done that too, but it's actually we picked up one girl from Mexico, but that's another conversation, right?
That's part two.
That's part two, right? But if we've got a general idea, normally John or Dan will go out and find them. But we also have relations with local law enforcement because I was prosecutor for a long time. I mean, here in Delray Beach, we've got Ariana Ciancio, who is she's like the in-house clinician for Delray Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Delray happens to it because it was the treatment capital of Florida for a long time.
Right.
A lot of people who are, you know, still actively using are going to Delray, and we'll normally reach out to Ariana and say, listen, you know, can you call the desk sergeant and get him to put out a bolo, be on the lookout for this person so we can find him.
Right.
And so, you know, Dan worked for PBSO. He'll make a phone call. Big John, you know, was DEA. He'll call the guy, you know, call one of his federal guys. I mean, we'll call whoever we need to call so that people start looking for these people because otherwise they're just going to be out there on the streets. And so we're pretty good at finding people.
That's amazing.
You know,
that's amazing.
We're pretty good at finding people.
That's amazing, man. That really is.
It's stressful. It's exhausting. It's emotional. But it's our passion, and it's given me purpose, gives my staff purpose. It's made my hair fall out and go gray.
No, that's a beautiful thing. Like,
but that's what brings us here to you, right?
When you talk about like it's passion and it's purpose. Like you have to have those two elements, like with what you guys are doing, because it's a lot. You know, I'm sure that you come into situations where some of these people that are in active addiction or on the street, they don't want help, man.
No,
they don't. They think you're fucking crazy. Like they think they're fine, you know?
Well, you know, it's so funny. I'll say funny. It's ironic that you say that, right? Because how the family dynamics typically work, right? So the parents and the siblings are all like, what's the story with Marco, right? And Marco's like, what do you mean? I'm fine. Yeah, Marco's like, my parents, my brother, they're all nuts. What the hell's the matter with them? I'm fine.
They're against me. There's a coup.
Marco spends all day sleeping, and at night he's playing video games and smoking weed in the basement. And when he's not doing that, he's out partying with his friends, getting high.
Mm.
That's the status quo.
Right.
Marco doesn't even realize he has a problem. You want Marco to have this moment where he's like, oh, I need help.
Yeah.
Marco doesn't know he has a problem. He thinks everybody else has the problem. You want the light bulb to go off? There's no light bulb to go off.
No. So you're like really working like entwined with the parents, the brothers, the sisters, the uncles, like, really like street level, boots on the ground, like trying to really assist these families to get him or her safe in a facility. And you're really centralized in South Florida.
We are, but we've opened up an office in Boston because Audra practice.
You mentioned that. Where in Boston?
So where is it? Seaport? We have a virtual office in Seaport.
Right,
where is that?
In the port of Boston.
On the port of Boston. Okay.
And so we have a guy up there who's a life coach who's been around. He's what I call a street guy.
What's his name?
Jimmy Kane.
And so I'm going to meet Jimmy tomorrow.
You're going to meet Jimmy tomorrow.
Okay.
Jimmy is an old streetwise guy, and
where's your office here locally?
So we're in Boca.
You're in Boca.
Yeah,
right.
We've been pretty much 100% virtual since COVID came along.
Okay.
We still have a physical office, but we work virtually, which is great because it allows us to be anywhere we need to be and still get done what needs to get done. Fortunately, what COVID did is it sort of dragged the legal profession kicking and screaming into the 21st century, and now a lot of our hearings are on Zoom.
Okay.
Which is great, which means we don't have to spend hours and hours on the road.
Right.
It also means if I'm in Boston, I can do a hearing down here in Florida, or if I've got a hearing in Tallahassee, I can be down here.
Right.
Much more efficient for us, means things get done quicker, saves the clients money, means we get court orders much quicker, people get picked up quicker, get into treatment quicker. So, I mean, that's been a game changer, just the technology.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great.
Will you guys come back and do another episode with us?
Yeah, that would be great.
So
of course, we would love to do that. You know that.
Thank you. So how do people find you? What's a website? Where an address? Give all that information.
Yep. So the website is drugandalcoholattorneys.com. It's our main website. You can also go to bakeractattorneys.com.
Okay.
The main number of the office is 561-419-6095. That's 561-419-6095. And I'll give you my email address.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's Mark, M-A-R-K, at Astor, A-S-T-O-R, Simovich, which is Audra's last name, S-I-M-O-V-I-T-C-H, law.com. Mark at AstorSimovichLaw.com. And otherwise, just Google me. You'll find me all over the...
Yeah, you can find it. You can Google him. I Google him. He's all over the place. They're all over the place. Okay, so yeah, look, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. This is a lot of knowledge and a lot of information, shedding light on how really like the legality and how we can help people in various aspects and families. Getting people help, putting them in facilities.
Yeah, and look, and the other thing is we have a ton of resources. Not everybody that calls us wants to hire us. Some people need an interventionist, they need a life coach, and I have all those resources, and I give them away for free.
That's amazing.
Yeah, if you hire me to do legal work, yeah, I got a family to take care of, and I got to be paid. But if you just need resources, I got a book, I got videos. You need a clinician, you need a treatment center, you need a life coach. Call me. I'll give you the name of somebody. I'll give you the name and the phone number. You can call them. No problem. Happy to chat.
And on your website, do you also have videos as well too?
Yep.
Okay,
there's a ton of video content in both the websites. There's a book on each one.
Okay.
The one on the drug and alcohol attorneys talks about Marchment and guardianship. The one on the Baker Act attorneys websites talks about the Baker Act. And there's tons of videos. They're all based on real cases. So a family can go on the website and can really figure out what's really going on. And I think they'll know if they're getting BS by the facility because they just need to listen to the videos. They'll be like, okay, yeah, that's that shit I just saw in the video. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Yep, you have a problem.
Okay.
It'll tell you. You'll know.
All right.
And if you don't, call me. Jared, who does my intake, knows his stuff like the back of his hands. And, during regular hours, you get a free consult. Jared knows his stuff. We're happy to chat with you guys.
All right. So we'll bring you guys back in and we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper into some things and you can, discuss more about some stories that you want to talk about in terms of what families and you helped and things like that of that nature. All right?
That'd be great.
All right, cool. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you,
I really
Marco.
appreciate it. Thank you everybody for tuning in, listening to this episode or watching on the YouTube channel. I really appreciate everybody that's been reaching out, emailing and through Instagram, TikTok, all the nice comments on YouTube. We're really, really putting it out there, and we're really helping people, and that's the most important. That was my mission to start. So if anybody needs any suggestions or any help or anything, you can email me at BAMN realrecoverytalk@gmail.com. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Bye.